Okay, so I just wanted to provide some examples of how you might present qualitative research in either a presentation or a poster, just to think about the graphic ways that you could present textual data. So is um, this first one is a table, and there's three outcomes here, the three themes here across the top. And I have the percentage of the number of coding in each of these themes. And then these lines are sub-themes underneath. So for example, building partnerships is related to collaboration and communication, collaborating with faculty, developing relationships, evaluating and leveraging organizational culture. So these are all sub-themes. And the reason that they're separated in these color bars is because I saw a pattern going across these three themes for some of the sub-themes. But that's a way that you could present, is just create a table with your theme at the top, your percentage of your codes, and then list some sub-themes. Here's another example of that. Over here on the right, these are the themes. It says core variables because I was doing grounded theory. So all of these learning tools, cognitive and technical participation in the community of learning, and scaffolding all fit into this final core variable of a learning community of practice. But if you just want to, you're not doing that, but if you just want to look at how this is presented. So here's the theme, cognitive and technical. There were two sub-themes, cognitive tools and technical tools. And within each of those were kind of like sub-themes. So if you think of these as the parents, if you think of the first one as the parents, the children would be cognitive and technical, and the grandchildren, if you want to think of it that way, are these ones. And then I just put the number of codes that I counted up for each of those categories. So that would just be another way of presenting it. If you have a lot of codes, you can put the numbers, but if you don't have that many codes, sometimes it's more helpful to do the percentage. Okay, this version, this table is themes looking at two different sets of data, similar to what you guys might be doing, where I did importance as one of my, instead of doing positive, negative, neutral, I did important, not important. So in this case, learning issues were 70%, 70% of the coding was on learning issues, was about feedback. This is the code feedback from faculty, and this was the feedback. This is a quote here from a student. This is a quote here from a faculty member, and this is the theme, learning issues, and this was the #1 theme, and 70% of the codes were by faculty, but only 30% of the students actually talked about learning issues. So if you just want to think about how that might fit with your data, where maybe you could look at the percentages of positives and negatives, and then give a quote related to one theme for those themes that cross over instructors and students. Here's another one, which is just percentage. So these are my 4 themes down here: self, social support, situation, and strategies based on a theory. And these are 3 different sets of data: autoethnography data, triangulated document data that I found in other places, and this was data from a book that I coded. And these show the percentages. You'll notice that the autoethnography and triangulation data is pretty similar, but this book data is very different. So I wanted to put those 3 pieces out there together. That would be another way of just showing the percentage of coding for social support in the autoethnography text was 26.6, and the triangulated data was 20, and in the book was 6%, okay? Another way is just to list your themes on a slide or on a poster, how many themes you had, what the theme is, and you could throw in a few sub-themes. I would put the most common ones that appear under your theme. So here there's 3 main themes with a few sub-bullets related to sub-themes. Then you would go to the next slide and you would talk about one theme And then here's a quote. So while you're explaining what personal touch in the learning process means, this would be a quote that people could be looking at on the screen if you're doing a presentation. Here's another example of that. There's 5 themes here. Here's the 5 themes. Then you go to the next slide. Here's one of the themes. Here's a quote from that theme. And these are subcodes: beyond the content, beyond helping, mentoring students equals personalized approach. So these are codes that all fit within this theme of moving beyond helper to mentor. And this would be a good example of a quote from a student. Okay, I mean from a librarian. You can also do word clouds. So there's software online that you can create word clouds. And this one I did pre-survey open question data. This was my word cloud pre-survey. This was my post-survey collected at the end of the semester. And notice the difference in the number of words that are used and the kind of words that are used. So library, and instead of find research, use is the biggest word, which was really exciting for me to see that students were not just talking about they had to find literature before that they did library class, but now they're talking about using resources, database, articles. Find is still there, but use takes more of a preference. So sometimes putting things in a word cloud can show you some patterns that might be useful. This is a concept map. This is another way. This is for a paper that I published with some atmospheric science. So my main theme here, one of my themes was change. There were 313 codes related to that theme. And these were the sub-themes: student learning, student needs, learning level differences, and format issues. And these were all sub-themes of those. There's a great tool for this called CMap in the cloud. You can find that, and you could create a map pretty easily if you wanted to map out some of how things are connected. I have a larger map with all of my themes and all of these little pieces off of that, but I didn't want to overwhelm you, okay? Here's one where you can use speech balloons. So speech balloons are helpful to kind of show quotes. So this was just a template that I found in PowerPoint. And this was I used this as an opener to my presentation. So when this was up on the screen, people could look at the quotes before I started my presentation. You can also use it as a way to wrap up your presentation. So lessons learned, what are your main themes? Then I put quotes here, so you can see I used the same graphic, I just cropped it. This was actually used on a poster. So you can use speech balloons on the posters as well. If you wanted to point out, I don't remember if these were color coded in any way related to my theme. I think they were just color coded so that the same colors weren't next to each other, but you could do it with color coding and be like, all the blue speech balloons are related to this theme and the yellow ones are related to another theme. Just a more interesting way to present your quotes instead of just a whole slide of text of quotes. If you see connections, if you see connections in your themes, you can create like a little model or framework. So this was some research that I did for my dissertation about the 5 different ways that faculty design instruction in higher ed. These white boxes are my 5 different ways that faculty design courses. This one is the biggest, most complex one, and all of these kind of fit into that. So I could see a framework that I used that I could create based on my main themes that emerged from the data. So I hope that gives you some idea of how you might, different ways that you might present your qualitative coding. You can do it with text. You can do it with the numbers, the frequency numbers of how many codes are in which theme. You can compare your interviews versus your surveys, or your students versus your faculty. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Let me know what I can do to help. So I just wanted to create this really fast.